All of you as agencies used to say to me that I could have my work good, fast, and cheap, and I could pick two, right? I could have it good and fast, I could have it fast and cheap, I could have it good and cheap, but I couldn't have all three. And in my own way, and I think almost every client out there now is saying, actually, yes, yes, and yes. I'd like great work. I need it at the speed and the pace of the marketplace, and I also need it done efficiently. I was then going to tell you about 4 imperatives that I see for agencies today. The first imperative, without hesitation, is that all of your work, all of your content must be exceptionally good. Right? We do not have a calling card. We do not have a reason for being if the work and the output that we create is not very good. This is a frame from a piece that we recently launched last week from DDB New York for the Wildlife Conservation Film Festival. And if you haven't seen it, it is an absolutely breathtaking stop-motion film being compared to Scarecrow from Chipotle. So an exceptionally great piece of content. And that's an example of the content that we put out there has to be useful, interesting, compelling, share-worthy. It has to create some sort of reaction. The last stat I saw was that there are 6,000 daily impressions that the average US consumer sees. 6,000 daily brand impressions. So if you're creating content or you're in the business of creating work, yours must cut through an awfully big ocean of content. The second thing I was going to tell you was that speed is now the currency of business. Speed is the currency of business. That's in the biggest definition. So speed isn't just the currency of advertising, and it isn't just the currency of marketing, it is the currency of business. Speed is unilaterally impacting your client's business across every factor that they know, from supply chain to distribution, to customer relationship management, to customer service, to their employee communications and relationships. It is impacting everything. And if we sort of think of ourselves as a second as just consumers and not marketers or advertisers, we can think about the fact that we have a very high expectation for the brands that we do business with and their ability to deliver at the speed that we desire. So speed is impacting everything that your clients are facing now. And therefore, they need that level of speed and that ability to meet the demands of the marketplace from you, their partners. I was also going to tell you that this word called efficiency has a very bad rap in our industry, and it is not correct. There is way more efficiency to be found in agencies. As a client, this was one of my deepest frustrations, and it simply means that we have not been innovative enough. We have not chosen to pursue models, and again, back to an ever-changing marketplace, that yield better ways and yield better outcomes and therefore yield more efficiency. So efficiency is not a bad word, and it gets a bad rap in our industry, and it should not. We need to be more innovative. And the final thing I was going to therefore tell you is that all of us now need to look at our processes and look at our approaches and think about how we are going to set up our agency in a model, to Shireen's language, that will successfully meet the mandates and the remit of the marketplace that we are all operating in today. I was going to tell you a little bit about DDB Flex and what we're doing, and this is our model, and this is about us looking across the 16 agencies that are in DDB North America and the 2,000 associates and having a view of the cross capabilities we have. I was going to tell you about the fact that we partner with agencies, whether they are Omnicom agencies or not. Your client does not care about your holding company, in case that hasn't been made clear until now. You must partner very well with all of your clients' agencies. I was also going to tell you about embedding media partners in our recent McDonald's win in the US. We have Facebook and Google and New York Times T-Brands embedded inside the agency. That is the only way to move at the speed and the pace and the efficiency of the marketplace that a brand and a company like McDonald's demands. I was also going to tell you about how we're partnering with our brands and companies' marketing partners, and that is an expectation. And perhaps most controversially, that we're now embedding clients into our process and often inside the agency in order to meet this remit of a good, fast, and efficient model. But then I got on the plane this morning and I looked at my Twitter feed. And I realized that this talk, while potentially interesting, was not nearly as important as the one that I should be giving and the conversation that we should be having right now in our industry. Because I think the challenges in our industry are very much reflected in much of the news we see around us. In fact, if we want to create a model about managing the present and inventing the future, then we have to talk about people and we have to talk about leadership. It is the only way that we will stare down the challenges, the 5 that Shireen listed, and many, many more that are facing our industry right now. And ultimately, if we want to get to a yes, yes, and yes model, then the only way to get there, to do amazing, incredible work at the speed and the pace and the demands of the marketplace in an efficient way, is to realize that we're better together. And that's a really important message for us as an industry. I would suggest to you that we have perhaps taken competition one step too far when we are not standing shoulder to shoulder and arm in arm around the very important and meaningful issues of our industry. And that's what we have to do more of. So let's talk about people first, and then I'll talk about leadership a little bit more second. So first on people, why are people important? Well, if you accept with me that we're developing a model about great work at the speed of the marketplace in an efficient way, the only way to get there is through collaboration. At the very root of being able to move fast and efficiently is that people can collaborate. At DDB, we are very focused on this. And this is a very simple statement, but it's very hard to do. We are evaluating how people work as importantly as what they make. And that's a very new thought for our industry. How many times have any of you in this room heard the language or sort of a euphemism for, well, they're very, very creative and they just need to kind of do it their way and they have to be kind of alone, and when they're ready, we'll be able to engage. Right? Have you heard something that sounds strikingly familiar like that from our industry? Of course you have, right? We're an industry that has been built on and celebrated the what's, and in the meantime we have let the how's, our behaviors, how we treat people, how we work together, how we collaborate, kind of fall by the wayside. Well, the demands in the marketplace won't accept that now. They will not accept that. So we have to elevate that, and we must treat what's and how's in equal measure. Bill Bernbach, our founding forefather, the B in DDB, has a fantastic quote that I really like a lot. When we started our agency, we had in mind precisely the kind of people we wanted with us. There were 2 kinds. You had to be talented and you had to be nice. Life is too short to sacrifice so much of it to living with a bastard. It's a great quote, right? And that was 66 years ago. I'll hold while you're taking your photos. Okay. I was raised at GSD&M. My other agency experience was about 15 years ago at GSD&M with this guy, Roy Spence, Reverend Roy. If you've never heard him speak, he would stand up here and evangelize, and you all would leave as disciples of Reverend Roy. And one of Roy's fantastic statements that he would make all the time is that no one has a corner on the smarts, and a great idea can come from anywhere. And I fundamentally believe this. But I have to tell you, as I've looked at my own agency, and as I look at many of yours, this notion of sourcing ideas from anywhere / everywhere is not what I see. I don't see a diverse and inclusive population of anywhere and everywhere people. And that's something we've got to fix. If this is a truth to you, then we have to fix how we're making sure that we're not leaving any great ideas or anyone who has the potential to create great ideas for our clients behind. I joined DDB in January, and in February, we launched our position on gender equality, and it was around Women's International Day. And this was a program we did internally, and it was simply to state our belief. And our belief is this, that talent has a lot to do with a lot of things. It has to do with your education, it has to do with your experience, it has to do with your training and your development. But your talent has absolutely nothing to do with your gender. And that was an important message for us to send out to the 2,000 associates at DDB in North America. This quickly kind of bled outside our walls and became something that was, I think, a bright light during a very dim time in our industry. But this is just one facet of our diversity and inclusion message, because in the same sense that your talent has no gender, well, it has no race, it has no religion, it has no age, and it has no sexual orientation. None of these things has anything to do with the talent that you bring to your job and that the people and the teams that your agencies bring to their job. And so our ambition on this is very, very simple. Back to that, getting all of the great ideas that are out there. Why would we ever have a narrow aperture instead of the broadest aperture possible to recruit the best and the brightest people, to bring amazing thinking to our clients, therefore grow their business and then in turn grow our own? So our ambition is simple. It does not take charts and graphs. It doesn't take a long presentation to tell you what our ambition is. It is simply to be as diverse and inclusive as the marketplace that we serve on behalf of our clients, period. That's our ambition, and we will not rest until we meet that ambition at DDB. Now, let's talk a little bit more about leadership, because we've talked about people. Now we're going to celebrate and advance and recommend people based on their whats and their hows, and we're going to expand that aperture of finding great ideas from anywhere and everywhere, because no one has a corner on the smarts. But let's talk about the leadership that's required to lead all of the teams at our agencies. For me, leadership is made up of three things: bravery, belief, and using underestimation, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about bravery first. Bravery is a really big word, and it gets used a lot, and it's hard to be brave sometimes, right? Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese warrior who wrote The Art of War. It's a dry read. I'm not sure I recommend any of you read it, but it's a good one if you can get through it. But he has 5 traits that he says are traits of a successful leader. And these are now time-tested for 5 centuries. So I think we're going to lean into these, right? He says you need to be brave, caring, disciplined, smart, and trustworthy. Those are the 5 traits of successful leaders. And for me, anytime I have thought about things that either went the way I wanted them to or the way I didn't want them to, I can reflect on these 5 qualities and see where perhaps I could have done something different. Was I brave enough? Did I care enough? Was I disciplined enough? Was I smart enough? And was I trustworthy enough? And so I love these taken together, and certainly at the top of those is brave. Bravery is about being willing to disrupt the status quo. And to the setup that we heard this afternoon from Shireen, we need to disrupt ourselves. And there's a great quote, you guys know this: disrupt or be disrupted. Someone's going to disrupt us. You heard some of the early conversation about consultants and that sort of thing. We've got to be willing, we've got to be brave enough to disrupt our own status quo, right? We've got to be this guy, right? In the center of this crowd, being willing to stare down what everyone around him was doing and refusing to do it. That's brave. Because ultimately, I think you can be a worse you, a worse them, or a better you. And this is true for people, this is true for brands, this is true for companies. When I was at Coke, whenever we got distracted with whatever Pepsi was doing, we would only ever be a second best Pepsi. We can never be the best Pepsi, but we could be the best Coke. And this is true for people too. Yeah, I see a lot of people will come and ask for advice or mentoring relationships, and they sit and tell me about what someone else is doing in the office or someone else in their daily lives is doing. And I want to say to them, someone looked across a table from you at some point and looked you in the eyes and said, you are perfect for this job. Hired you because you're the best you, not because you're the second best thing. And it takes sometimes some bravery to be yourself, but that's the best thing that you can be, for brands, for people, for companies. To me, bravery is underpinned by 2 core traits: curiosity, being willing to pick up every rock, right? Look underneath it, see what's there. Asking the constant question, why? Like kids, right? They're so curious. Why is this happening? What can we do? Why should we not do something? Why should we do something? That constant curiosity. This is a great quote on curiosity here. Curiosity is one of the most permanent and certain characteristics of a vigorous intellect. Anyone in here not want to be considered having a vigorous intellect? Right? It's a great quote. Of course you do, right? That's what curiosity is all about. The other thing then is passion, right? Having this relentless passion, this relentless energy for what you do. It's a great quote here from Maya Angelou: my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Amen. Passion, curiosity, building up to bravery, bravery being so important in leadership, so important for your team to know where you stand, that you're willing to disrupt the status quo, to know what you stand for and what you believe in. Now let's go to being underestimated. Anybody in the room ever been underestimated? It's a rhetorical question. You have all at some point been, I'm not sure whether you're not listening, whether you're too scared, whether it wasn't on your brain thing, I'm not sure. You have all been underestimated at some point. How do you feel when you're underestimated? Anyone? Small, yes? Happy? Anyone happy to be underestimated? Excited? Okay. Generally, you're pissed. I mean, I'll put it out there for you. Like, generally, when someone underestimates, you're like, really? I mean, really? Right? And you get angry about it. Because you're like, well, you know, someone underestimated, they didn't think I could do something, and I can do it, and you get all, right? Like that. You're angry at them. My submission to you is that you should actually be more like this gentleman and excited about it. Because being underestimated actually is fuel in your tank. When someone underestimates you, what have they done? You thought the bar was here, but actually they've lowered the bar because you're not capable. So you're going to have to now just go over this bar down here because they have somehow thought less of you, right? So being underestimated, the bar comes down. So what are you going to do? You're going to crush it, right? You're going to leap that bar. You're going to crush this whole thing. So this is like fueling your tank to succeed. When you underestimate me, I will outthink. You want a skipping contest? I will outskip you. Right? This is how you got to feel when you're underestimated. And people are going to underestimate you. They're going to underestimate your agency. They're going to underestimate your companies that you work for, your clients. This can happen at any point. And when it happens, instead of getting angry, I would suggest to you that you get excited, that you get energized, that this is game on. You're this guy, right? Anyone read Adam Morgan's Eating the Big Fish? Fantastic book about being a challenger brand. Even the biggest brands in the world have to have the challenger mindset. I would say even the biggest agency brands have to have the challenger mindset. It's an absolutely winning mindset, and I think it can absolutely be part of a great leadership style, and therefore a way that you can lead your teams and your agencies successfully. The final thing I want to talk about then is belief. Belief. I think belief is the most powerful tool in business. The most powerful tool in business. There is nothing that a group of like-minded, connected people with a great vision and a shared ambition can't do if they believe in the goal. When I was at Coke, for the 10 years preceding going into the North America business unit, we had never made our business plan, and in that 10th year, we made our business plan, and I will tell you, it had everything to do with the fact that we drove belief that we could do it, that this was attainable, that what we were doing was right, that we were convicted in what we were doing. Belief is a marvelous tool, and you have to drive belief with your teams. And I would lift up here for a second and say we have to drive belief in this industry, that this industry is important and vital and has a lot of contributions to make. Belief can be considered from individual all the way up to company, so this is a fantastic quote for the individual belief from Henry Ford, because whether you believe or think you can or you can't, you are right. Whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. That is all in here. This is all in your mind. Do you believe what you're doing? Are you passionate and curious so that you're brave? Are you taking that underestimation and are you using it as fuel? Are you recruiting people and measuring them on what's and how's so that you've got great, talented, nice people around you? This all comes together and is sewn up on belief. Jack Welch has a great quote here: the idea flow from the human spirit is absolutely unlimited. All you have to do is tap into that well. It's creativity, it's a belief that every person counts. Back to the thought that a great idea can come from anywhere and every person counts. And finally, from John Quincy Adams, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And that is a fundamental underpinning of belief. So that's what was on my mind on my flight this morning as I was thinking about talking to you. I think the imperatives for our industry, and quite frankly, the future of our industry, rests on how we recruit, how we retain, how we promote and advance people, and the kind of people, therefore, that have the principles to work better together. within the industry, within your agency, with one another, with your clients, because collaboration now is at the core of a model that is about being good, fast, and efficient in order to manage the present and invent the future. And so that's my view of the big picture. And so with that, I'm going to ask Shireen to join me on stage and quiz me really difficult questions.
Thank you. Let's give Wendy a big round of applause. That was amazing. I love that. Better together. What does that look like in practice? Because these are all things that I know you are very passionate about. These are things presumably leadership at GDB is passionate about. How do you go forward and go to an agency that is so big and say, here's what we're going to tangibly do to make sure we get this done? I know that you've probably done many things, but can you give us an example of one thing?
Yeah, I think this probably came into sharp focus with the McDonald's pitch, right? So, and that was an Omnicom pitch. We had 19 different agencies in that pitch, a lot that I had never even met. And suddenly, you know, I'm introducing myself and we're going to go pitch together. I would tell you, for that pitch, probably the marker of it, it was a jaunt. I mean, it was a race. 60 days from beginning to end. We had to write a completely new operating model. You know, there were 6 briefs within the pitch. I mean, it was an inordinate amount of work. On the final day of the pitch, June 27th, etched in my mind.
Tattooed.
After the pitch, a 3.5-hour pitch, we went back. We had pitched it in an area that would be the new agency space, and we went back to DDB in Chicago, and we had vast quantities of alcohol and you know, and Mexican food. No one wanted to leave. We had been up. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, I don't. There were some people who hadn't slept in 60 days, but certainly in the last week and in the run up to it, no one wanted to leave the room because we didn't want to even consider not being together. That we had been through that experience together and we were so committed and so connected, like no one wanted to leave. I mean, I can't even underscore it. So, and most of that was just the way that we led the pitch, which was everyone's ideas counted, a transparency, to use your word, of what worked and what didn't. I have no problem with tension, by the way. I think tension is at the core of great storytelling is tension. So as an industry, we have to love tension, but it's where you place the tension. If you place the tension on the ball and not the people, so my quote is, you know, I always say internally is play the ball, not the person. We played the ball every day of the 60 days for McDonald's, and the ball is what was the right thing to do for McDonald's. And we'll have explosive, huge, massive discussions and tension on what's the right thing to do, but it's never about the people who bring the ideas. It's bringing everyone in, putting the ideas in the middle, wrestling and getting to the right thing, and then moving forward, and then the ability to have a beer with each other because we know we walk out of that room knowing we did the right thing for the brand. And so I think this gets overplayed a lot, I think, around some of the histrionics of it, and it's not as difficult as I think it's been made out to be.
Okay, so that's an example where you came back and you'd won afterwards, and so you were able to look back and say, hey, that thing we did
we proved
worked.
It. Yes.
What if it hadn't worked? What about an example where, maybe not a pitch, but where you came back and actually you didn't win a pitch or didn't do it right?
Yeah, we've had, listen, you were one of my first interviews, and when in February, I'm getting interviewed by Shireen, and I was like, I remember looking across at her in the podcast booth, and I said, I hate losing. And her eyes got huge. She's like, this is going to be a really hard job for you, Wendy.
You were, what, 29 days in?
I was like 29 days in. I was like, I hate to lose. And she's like, oh, this is going to be rough. So yes, we've lost pitches. Right. We came second in Uber. We came second in eBay. I mean, there are a number of things out there that pop to my mind immediately. I hate being second. Yeah. But I think what you do is, can you look at what you did and say that you did your best and that you got, you know, that you worked in a way that you wouldn't have changed a thing? And I would say yes. And so that, do we need to improve certain aspects of, did we have the right capability or the right solution, or did we size it up the right way? Those are all things that you're always reflective about. But I don't think that that means the principle is wrong. I just think that it means that we didn't quite get to where we needed to on all the aspects of a good, efficient, and, you know, fast model.
Yeah. I want to change tack a little bit. There's obviously a huge conversation in the industry around gender, around race, everything else. How do you sort of take, because the conversation sort of is gone, it's beyond something that you can control as a company, as even a department. There's a lot in the press about it. There's a lot of people in the industry talking about it. how do you sort of take everything that's coming at you? Sometimes it's stupid things people are saying in public. Sometimes it's something blowing up on Twitter and you can't control, and yet everyone in your agency is probably talking about this thing. Is it hard kind of taking all these things and sort of making sure that you're still turning it into a positive experience, trying to make sure that they know what you said earlier, which is, yeah, talent has no gender. This conversation may be happening, but we want to make sure we're keeping it positive within DDB.
Yeah, so a couple of things on that. Number one, I think actions are louder than words. So I'm very glad that we have our ambition written out. Most importantly, though, we've implemented unconscious bias training for all 2,000 associates this year. Everyone will have been trained by the end of this year. Number two, we partnered with The Edge, which is a third-party accreditation firm who will come in and look at our policies and practices and accredit DDB as being gender equal. So they'll look at pay and performance and promotions and all those sorts of criteria. We're the first agency. There's no other agency who's ever partnered with them. They've partnered with Novartis and L'Oreal and many others, IKEA. So the reason I talk about those actions, because I think they're meaningful to our associates, number one. But the most important thing I can do is talk about them publicly. I think every agency should do this. I'm not looking for an advantage on this. I think this is an all boats rise issue. And until our industry lifts up on this, then I don't think that we'll solve it. So part of this is us talking about actions, sharing best practices, sharing what works, what doesn't. I think this is something where we should lay down those competitive arms on something like this, because we will only be as good as our weakest link on this. And it will continue to be a topic until we reflect the diversity and inclusion that's represented in the marketplace.
Because, you know, one thing that you said earlier too was that sort of everyone talks about bravery all the time. I mean, I've heard sort of this like brave language around advertising around agencies for a long time, but it is really hard to be brave. And when there's things occurring in the wider world that you want to make a stand on, or you want to say something about, it can get really hard. And I think overall, you know, we've seen certain brands, certain agencies step up and get involved in issues that are beyond advertising and do it, I think, courageously. And then there's some people who don't, and they have their own reasons for it. Where do you stand on the issue of how involved to get? Whether it's politically, whether it's, or whether it's just when something huge is happening in the world around you that's affecting you, and maybe even affecting your people, because there are people in your industry who are living through a lot of those things.
Well, what we say is, and you're talking to someone who's been part of WikiLeaks, so I mean, I sort of smile at that a little bit. That was sort of an interesting couple of weeks ago where I had to be like, so Chuck. Anyway, what we say routinely is that we want everyone who works at DDB to feel like they can bring their whole selves to work. And if you're going to invite your team to bring their whole selves to work, you've got to take everything that comes with their whole selves. And my submission on that is that when you feel like you can cross the threshold of the place that you work and be exactly who you are, be the best you, not a worse them, that you will do the best work of your life. And that's been true for me in my career, and I think it's been true for many people. When you feel that confidence and that place that just rewards you for being you, you do your best work. And so if people have opinions, and again, differing opinions don't worry me, and tension doesn't worry me, as long as we always place it on the topic and the issue and not on the people that carry the opinion. And I think that's where you can get tripped up sometimes, is aggression between people who have different points of view. You know, I flew here this morning and I bravely wore my Hillary Clinton t-shirt through the Atlanta airport and into the Arizona airport, which are two very red states. But you know what? This is about my belief system. Right?
And that's exactly what I mean.
If you can let everyone. But
so if somebody's coming into work and they're coming in with a point of view, whether it's about president, the presidential election, or about something else, if it's about Black Lives Matter, you may not get people who agree with you. So sometimes that conversation may not be positive. You may not always have the positive thing there that's present. If it creates that tension, how do you channel it?
I just think that that tension is exactly part of the mosaic and the diversity of this amazing patchwork that we call this country, and therefore the marketplace that we're operating in. Of course, I mean, we're living in a time that, you know, is perhaps the most divided ever in the country, and I think we have to lean into a belief, as all of our forefathers have, that we're better together, that it's our dimension and our diversity of point of view that makes us as exceptional as we are. You can look out at so many other countries and see this, you know, sort of homogenous way of thinking that, you know, that people are not allowed to have that dimension. And I think the minute we let go of that, we would be just so reticent. I think we would look upon this generation in this moment, and, you know, we can click into our industry, this moment in our industry, for not celebrating that, would just be a crime, be a massive loss.